other than maybe this would be a good point to say, how did this get started, or why did I do this? And it was a little bit of where I came from. So, you know, I've had a lot of experience with seeing how much security can be improved by looking at it from the attacker's perspective. You know, I definitely believe if you don't understand your adversary, you are going to have a lot of trouble protecting against it. And if you don't know what you're protecting, you will not be able to protect it. Like if you don't know it exists, you're not going to be able to protect it. So situational awareness is really important. Visibility is really important. And when I needed more of this for myself, working with clients, it just, this is about 4 years ago, actually, next week. Yeah, this was a bit of a gap where the capabilities were lacking. So I created this a little bit for myself initially and the work I was doing, but then quickly felt like we should contribute this to the community. It took about a year after that for OWASP to notice it, and then we made it an OWASP project. So what exactly is the Amass project, though? So put simply, or as simply as you can describe it, I think it's attack surface mapping. That's what this project has always been about. It's about getting the most complete picture possible of an organization or a namespace's attack surface on the internet. So specifically, what this tool does is it ingests information that's available from the internet, such as OSINT data sources, and it does some techniques, you know, implement some techniques to then continue investigating these exposed assets. But then it continues to make this information, say, more usable by implementing tracking features, which allow, or it could be a user or an organization, to answer questions like, okay, we have, you know, thousands of discovered assets. Which ones are new? You know, which ones were we not aware of? You know, these are, it's you know, nobody wants to go through all the data, right? That's what it boils down to. So tracking allows you to get quick answers to those kinds of questions. We also have visualization, so that if you are not just doing this continuously and, you know, looking for changes, but it's actually a little bit more of an investigative stage, say, of your OSINT work, then the visualization can be really helpful, because it allows you to see what other organizations the target organization is connected with, or what networks the assets reside on, and therefore there could be maybe more assets or more namespaces that you weren't aware of. By using the visualization, I think it makes it really easy to quickly spot those things and then expand the scope of your enumerations. And then last on here, but definitely not least, this tool started out, you know, like many things, limited to, you know, what we were writing ourselves, but it's now extendable. So if a user or an organization has its own data sources, they can now roll that in to their use of the Amass project. And we're going to touch on all these things a little bit more in the upcoming slides. So really, this all, like I said, happened about 4 years ago, and it was around the same time when it seemed like people were finally recognizing that this was an essential part of a security program. I mean, it for quite a while it seemed like attack surface management was not considered a necessary part of a mature security program. But as I said at the beginning, if you're missing this information, you're going to have trouble making some really important decisions. For instance, if you don't know what you look like to a threat actor or an adversary, how do you answer the question of which assets are most likely to be attacked? Or do we have the assets that are most likely to be attacked hardened to the level that we're comfortable with? What about do we even know everything that's exposed on the internet? Which perhaps that sounds silly, but I have yet to work with any company where when that question comes up, that the answer was they knew everything that was exposed. Every single company I've ever worked with and helped them with this, we ended up discovering many more assets that were publicly reachable and they were not aware of it. So this is a very serious problem. And a lot of it, as I say here, it comes from this ongoing issue of asset inventory is rarely ever up to date with what's actually deployed. I mean, it's kind of that simple. And that's why you need attack surface management in order to make sure that you're staying on top of not what you think is deployed, but what is actually deployed, what's really out there right now. You could kind of call it what's out in the field versus what you hoped was out in the field. As I said, I mean, I guess I'm always pinching myself that this doesn't seem a little bit more like, well, of course, right? When you're listening to this, perhaps you think, well, yeah, wouldn't everyone look at it this way? But this has not been a priority for a lot of companies until the last couple of years. And this project has attempted to help that movement, to put the spotlight on the importance of attack surface management and kind of lead the charge, at least from the open source community, on how important this really is. Like I say here in the subtitle, you can't protect something if you don't know that you have it out there, right? If you don't know it's exposed, if you don't know it's been deployed, or this has happened and you weren't made aware of it, or the right teams weren't made aware of it, then it could just be out there on its own, so to speak. Like I mentioned earlier, this happens more than perhaps you would think, and it's just, frankly, I think unacceptable, especially when there's ways we can deal with this. So another focus of this project is there's a lot of places where you can get data about what's on the internet. And there's a lot of ways that you can attempt to enumerate what's on the internet. Amass currently supports 70 or more different data sources out of the box. So it's quite a bit of work maintaining all of these different data sources and making sure that they're all working correctly and we're taking full advantage of them when they make changes, that we're updating the Amass tool as well, so that we're continuing to use these data sources correctly. A lot of that has been made a little easier by establishing better relationships with the organizations that own these data sources. But at the end of the day, it really is we have a lot of contributors on this project, and everyone is working hard to try to keep all of this up to date and add new data sources as we learn of their existence. We definitely started off with far fewer than 70, and it's been a mixture of just hard work on this project and a strong community around this tool that has made it possible to expand it to what it is today. Like it says here, you could think of the data we're getting from these data sources as the trampoline stage of the enumeration, where we start off with all this data we're getting from these data sources or services, and then the tool continues to investigate these namespaces and the infrastructure in order to attempt to reveal more assets that perhaps the data sources didn't know about, using all sorts of different techniques. Like, I mentioned here DNS zone transfers. We have zone walking, we have pulling TLS certificates, crawling web pages. There's all sorts of things that have been implemented that attempt to glean additional information about the target organization's namespace and infrastructure. All right, moving along, tracking again. So yeah, this was this tool, was quite powerful when, as we continue to expand it, but it created this new problem, which is we had more data than we knew what to do with, right? Or most users were saying there's so much data and they just want, for instance, what's been removed, what's been moved, and what's new, right? Like these were the changes that they wanted to be informed about or informed of. Otherwise, it is like trying to find a needle in a haystack. So these tracking capabilities or features are possible because Amass does not just enumerate this information and then print it out and wash its hands and terminate. It's storing all this information in a graph database. And if you run your enumeration, let's say, it could be every day, it could be every week, it could be continuously, whatever makes sense for your security program. It's storing every single enumeration in the database, and all that is available to us, and we can, look at what was different from one enumeration to the next. It also helps us to make sure that everything we knew previously is being considered in the future enumerations so that we get consistency across the investigations or enumerations. So that when we say something's changed from one to the next, you can at least know, and we knew everything this time that we knew previously. So if we didn't find it, there's a pretty high percentage chance that means it's because it's gone now. The other interesting things we can do with this, and I'll talk more about this at the end, is that there's other questions you can answer other than did we lose assets, or did they move, or are they new? You can also answer questions such as which assets were known by the largest number of data sources. Or another way to look at that or say that could be, which of these assets are most likely to be discovered by an adversary? That could be a very interesting question to answer, I think, because it could help you prioritize which are most likely to become targets in a, say, targeted campaign, or just if someone's quickly doing this type of activity, which of these are most likely to show up on their radar. You could also, for instance, use this source information to say, well, we're going to pull in our own asset inventory information to the Amass project or the Amass tool. along with all the things that we're learning from the internet, and we will compare what was known from by our inventory versus what we found out from all the other sources. The delta could reveal what our inventory isn't accounting for, and therefore places where we need to update stale information or just missing information. So these are areas where we've attempted to, not simply enumerate what is available, but to reveal where security programs have, say, gaps in their own intelligence or information that they are working off of. I mean, asset inventory is really such a fundamental capability, right? that all of IT and security and others rely on. And anything we could do to shed light on where these, say, improvements need to be made, I think most people would agree is beneficial and worth the cycles to make the changes. All right. So what we have here is, so a couple things. Personally, I'm a very visual person. I found it early on in the life of this tool it was beneficial to have visualization. Perhaps part of that too is that prior to this tool existing, I was a big fan of Maltego. I was used to this process, say, of let's find the targets and let's see what this looks like, right? Or see where they are, things like that. So when this tool was created and we were able to get even more information, it seemed even more important that we were able to see it. But also, I really believe in this quote here that's underneath the title of this slide, which is, again, this is how attackers look at your organization. If you're on the defender, if you're a defender, it's beneficial, I think, to view your own organization the way the threat actor will, in order for you to help you understand what they're likely to be thinking when they're considering you as a target. So this can be good just to review if you're on the blue side, in order to understand what you look like to an attacker. It's obviously also quite beneficial if you're an offensive security professional and you just want to be able to look at your target and get a quick idea of, what would be, say, good to look at initially as a low-hanging fruit for your target organization. But also, if let's say you're just starting your investigation, and you're willing to expand the scope of what you're doing, the visualization allows you to expand the scope. It allows you to find additional namespace. Yes, if you are considering expanding the scope of your investigation, I personally find it easier to see what, for instance, networks could be added to the scope, and where you could find additional namespace by looking at the visualization and considering those things for future enumerations. All right. So I mentioned this briefly in the beginning, but this has turned out to be quite important. So extendability. We've tried very hard to try to get all the information we can possibly find out about and make available to users. Like I said, we have over 70 different data sources. Not all of them are necessarily free for use. Some of them, require having accounts with the service providers. But all the same, we've done everything we can to try and bring in all the data to our users. But there's always the possibility we could be missing something. There could be data sources that they have access to that we just don't know about, or that could be internal. So we added embedded scripting, very similar, I would say, to the way Nmap offers this to users. And we've moved a lot of our own implementations of these data sources to be scripts now in this scripting engine. So a couple advantages, I guess, of this. I mean, the obvious one being users have the ability to extend the tool, which, I think the place where that can be a really important feature is when they want to bring in their own asset inventory to be considered in the attack surface mapping. But for instance, I've heard stories where testers have said they've taken their own custom tools that are looking at the targets a little differently, and they've wrapped those tools in Amass scripts and then pulled the data into Amass so that it's adding to the, say, complete picture. So this is one more again important reason I think to have this is these scripts are so much easier to write. I mean, they're shorter. There's a lot of examples of them, so it's very easy for someone to look at one of these and then write a new one. And it really allows the person writing it, the developer, to focus on the data source and how it works and not how Amass works. So it makes it quicker for people to contribute new data sources or to enhance our implementation for existing sources. And it's really been an important addition to this this tool. All right. So what do we want to do now? I mean, many people have said that this project has been quite successful in helping bring attack surface management, at least from the open, as an open source contribution, to the community. That it's helped shed light on how important attack surface management is. And of course, we would like to continue bringing that value to the community, both from the perspective of, as a use case, a very, say, popular use case is bug bounty hunters love this tool, and it's helping them find targets that are in scope of bug bounty programs to then test web applications. So, if you're at least within the context of bug bounty hunting, that seems to be a pretty important step, right? Is that we're getting all the possible targets so that they can be assessed properly. But we also hear lots of people saying how they're, putting the Amass tool into their continuous security and continuous monitoring pipelines, so that they are always getting up-to-date information on what's actually exposed on the internet. But what can we do to bring additional value or just make this easier for people in the future, I guess, is what we're thinking at the moment. I think, people have shared with us that this tool's become kind of, well, the exact words I've heard some people use is it's a bit of a beast, right? Because it does a lot. And there's a lot you could find yourself learning if you're trying to take full advantage of it. And I think for some users, it would just be easier if there was like a web UI to make this a bit more point and click. So this is on our to-do list. While I'm not, personally, I'm not much of a front-end developer. We have a lot of contributors on this project, and of course, we're always looking for more. But I think we can definitely, at least get a first stab at this in the near future. The part that I'm is a little bit closer to me, or I'd definitely like to see, a focus on the, within the project on this is, what are we doing with the data that we're collecting? So we have a lot of this powerful data. We have, it's all in a graph database where we have these relationships between the assets and what we're discovering, all the discoveries. We're already doing quite a bit with this, but it just seems like there's so much potential to do more and make it easy for users to glean more useful information from what we've collected. So that's kind of what I've been thinking about more lately and trying to get more contributors focused on. But the truth is we have plenty of contributors that they've kind of taken ownership of maintaining the data sources and making sure our integrations are strong. I've been spending a lot of my time on this project maintaining relationships with the service providers to make sure that, if there's going to be upcoming changes, that we're aware of those in advance, so that, like I said earlier, we can offer a certain amount of, say, reliability with this tool, and we don't have things changing out from under us. So that's actually been consuming quite a bit of my own time that I have to put towards this project. But it's just going to have to keep happening. I mean, this is a high maintenance project, but so many people are using it every day that it seems definitely worth maintaining it. Now, I think if I were doing this slide justice, I think some people in OWASP would say I should have put a bullet in here about future integrations with other OWASP projects. There's been some discussion of integrating with other, I'll call them, let's see, tools that are useful to offensive security professionals that help in the assessment, with security assessment. I think Amass helps give those tools scope and makes it possible for them to know what targets are out there, so that they can then take it to the next level and investigate those targets and make sure that they don't have vulnerabilities. So I probably should have included that, because that's definitely been coming up again and again in recent discussions. I just don't honestly have timelines on when that's likely to happen, but I'm looking forward to those integrations. All right, with that, I guess I'll bring it to questions. I think we have 5 minutes for questions, and any questions that we don't have time for here, I've been told that you can bring it to that channel within our Slack, and I'll be there to help answer the questions.